Sooner or later, I get it right.
Good evening. We'll call to order the regular school board meeting for the Akron Public Schools for May 14th, 2018. To order, roll call, please.
Mr. Alexander.
Present.
Mrs. Baylor.
Here.
Mr. Bravo.
Here.
Mrs. Lasher.
Here.
Mrs. Mansfield.
Here.
Mr. Miller. Here. Reverend Walker.
Present. All right. Joining us this evening for the Pledge of Allegiance is Joseph Sedono from Sam Salem Community Learning Center. Joseph is a first grader in Mrs. Blackburn's class at Sam Salem. He's a model citizen, a very respectful boy, and a very hard worker. And his favorite subject is gym. Mrs. Blackburn's favorite thing about Joseph is that he loves to share his ideas with the class, and he volunteers many great ideas. He is very loving and always has a hug and a kind word for his teacher. Joseph is a tremendous reader and is ready for second grade, and he is also the grandson of our very own Mrs. Solomon.
Yes.
So with that, we'd like to welcome Joseph up to help lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Joseph, you're going to come up here with me? Awesome. Pick us up whenever you're ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's just do that again. Perfect.
Thank you. And do you want to tell us who you brought with you today?
My mom.
Well, thank you. Keep up the good work and sharing those great ideas. Anyone else with you? Besides your
My
mom?
grandma.
Get a picture of it. Come on, you guys. Come on. Mark, get a picture of it.
Flag.
You can do a retake.
Okay, here you go.
Right.
He was also learning to skateboard under the tutelage of Ryan Pendleton earlier. Parking lot.
Anytime you want to skateboard,
Did a
come on
great
back.
job. All right, with that, we'll open it up for community and school reflections if anyone would like to start. Anyone?
We'll start. I had a lot of tours in the last 4 weeks. I just wanted to say thank you, Mrs. Falk, the Business Affairs tour. We went to the APS Distribution Center, the Facility Services Building, the Transportation Services Building. It was absolutely amazing. And I had a handful of people ask me what the highlights were, and it is actually really hard to choose highlights because there's so many cool things that happen at those buildings. But one I've repeated a couple times is that we have a Lowe's. APS has our own mini hardware store where you can go and find things that you need. Also wanted to say thank you to Mrs. Otten Kelly for the tours of the elementary schools. We did pretty much, I think we did the entire Elliott cluster of elementary schools, and the last two we toured were Windermere and Betty Jane, and saw some really cool stuff, including Class Dojo, where teachers can actually communicate real time with parents. That was super cool. It was testing day soon, and there were some inspirational posters down the hallway that the younger kids created for the older kids. Apparently there's like a high five hallway parade, so folks can get high fives before their test too. Some fourth graders wrote a book that is for sale on Amazon.com, which is very cool. And it was neat to see the new Chromebooks actually in action. That felt very new for the kids. So thank you very much.
And I do have an autographed copy of the book for you guys. I left it on my desk.
Oh, that's well, I bought one on Amazon. I'll have to take it. And thank you very much to Mr. Black too. We did tours of Higher and Elliott that were fantastic, and thank you for organizing and getting to talk to the students. That was probably the highlight for me at both schools. one we have popped into a math class and chatted a little bit, and another there was a group of juniors and seniors that kind of talked about their experiences working with us. So thank you. That was really fantastic. And I think a handful of these events other folks will highlight, but one other I wanted to say was a thank you to the East High School drumline. They ended the heart-to-heart breakfast, and like that is the way you should start every Monday morning. So cool. So thank you.
Go ahead.
No.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the STEM capstone. I know Mrs. Baylor and I were both at
That's
that.
what I was alluding to.
At the Goodyear headquarters, which is quite an experience. I mean, I recently got to go on a tour of the Pentagon, and I can honestly say it was easier to get into the Pentagon than it was to get to Goodyear. It was very secure. There was even tape on our phones, so we couldn't take any pictures of anything, which was very, very frustrating. I got a little twitchy because the kids had so many great things I wanted to take pictures of. So they were wonderful, and one of the things that I was encouraged the most by was not just their presentations and how well they prepared, but some of the other folks that were there were encouraging them to quickly apply for patents for some of the work they were doing. Don't wait, they kept telling them, make sure that you consider doing this, and that was amazing. I thought they were great ideas, but to have a professional saying, this is marketable right now, was very.
With the University of Akron's law school legal clinic.
Very
They do
good.
that.
That's perfect. So that was great. It is the busy season, so I'm just going to hit punch a few highlights. On the table, the report out for that. Can't wait to do it again. I'm hoping that as a district, we're already on board. One of the things that they talked about that was that they wanted to lift up this coming year is more youth involvement. So hopefully we can help with that since we've got a little more time. We kind of know more now that that's under our belt. The Akron Early College graduation was amazing as always and inspirational. They also set the bar very high for decorum during a graduation. It was well done and very respectful and very, the crowds were, you heard every name very well. So attention to all the rest of the high schools, the bar has been set. And then the last thing that I did attend on behalf of the district that I just want to highlight was the NAMI presentation. The gentleman who spoke at that was just breathtaking. He spoke about his mental illness with just openness and encouragement, and talked about how pain is inevitable, but suffering is basically is a choice. So he used a different word, but pain is inevitable, but suffering is, I don't remember right the second it'll come to me, but he just was incredibly inspirational. And I know that Ms. Culver was there, one of our psychologists was there as well, and they spoke to the Beacon Journal about how we apply that in our schools to get people help as they need it. So just wanted to highlight those.
And just to highlight again, Children's Service Board and their emphasis on wearing blue in recognition of our work with children. And we know of some of the very tragic stories that we read about and see, but then we saw the example of a young woman who had gone through quite a bit but hung in there to raise her children and also help herself. So we're grateful for those. And then also with the nominee, Mr. Hines was the individual, and one of the things he wanted us to do is to encourage our parents to tell our children to get rid of buy the least expensive cell phone. That all you need to do is dial 911. Because he felt social media was going to be the destruction of our children. Because cyberbullying and other things that have encouraged and discouraged our children in such a way where we see an increase in Stark County suicide rates, a number of things. And of course, he talked about, as Mrs. Mansfield said, his troubles that he has, but he said after his attempt on suicide that he would never do that again because he saw how he hurt the people around him, and that there is so much pain. We don't realize the pain that is among us, and even tonight there's somebody in pain in this room. And so he wanted us to acknowledge that by standing and saying, that I'm in pain. There's no shame in saying that you're in pain, but to acknowledge that so we can move forward. So I appreciated that. And then of course the heart-to-heart breakfast that was already mentioned, and our collaboration with that group and others in our community to help individuals, groups to move forward. And so our continued wonderful partnership that we have with so many groups is wonderful.
I don't have any community, but I do want to say this here. They're talking about this mental health and so forth. This is big. I don't know if any of you guys seen it, but they have a commercial that the NBA has, and you have a couple players talking about their own mental health issues and trauma. So those are individuals who have probably gone through school all the time, could have probably been labeled as special ed, is troubled kids and so forth, but had some type of trauma or some type of mental health issues. And we have to make sure that we look at that and take a real good look at it, because our kids, some of these kids are probably being labeled as special ed, just need some help. And if we can give them the right help, we can do that. The Brian James School, I think, is really going in the right direction. They're having those services. They'll be right there to make sure we can address these issues. Because if we don't address them, it's going to get worse, and it's going to be more of a problem, and it's going to be tougher for our teachers and administrators. So we got to make sure that we get the help for our staff, so staff understand what the mental illness is, teachers especially, because they have to deal with it each and every day. And so we got to make sure we handle that. If we don't, then shame on us. So I'm seeing too much probably in the last 7 to 8 months about mental health, and I knew it was there before, but it's really prevalent now. You got more people coming out and talking about it, so we need to be on the forefront of that in order to make sure that our kids get what they need, so that our teachers can function and teach them like they're supposed to, have less classroom issues and problems, and the kids can gain what they need as well. So I just had to throw it out there. I have nothing else, but that was the perfect time to say that.
Well, I'll take that segue, because I want to say something about the NAMI event as well, and a couple things that Mr. Hines said. I thought it was interesting. Number one, they said they had twice as many people at that luncheon than they've ever had before, and because of the speaker and how engaging he was. But I thought it was interesting talking about the cell phone and how he was sort of speculating that in the future he could see cell phones having like a Surgeon General warning for young people and their mental, social, emotional health, to not be around those. Sort of 50 years ago there were no warnings on cigarettes, now there are today. And I thought that was interesting. At least that's the take I got when he was talking about that. And I thought the other thing that was interesting that he said, and Reverend Walker touched on it, about he tried to kill himself, and he survived and saw the trauma it brought to his loved ones. And he was talking about, and I get he's not the only person I've heard this talk about, but the minute he let go of the railing jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge, he regretted it immediately. And I've heard other people talk who have survived suicide say the same thing. I think that's just worth repeating so people hear it, and anybody who's considering taking their life thinks about that before they do it. Now, on a little lighter note, another thing I did, I went to the Akron Urban League. They're continuing their discussion on race. Let's talk about race. Bill Considine spoke. It was more talking about leadership, and he gave out his book to everybody who attended that, got a copy of his book. I actually had already read the book. And I told them that, and they insisted I take one. So if somebody hasn't read it, come get this one from me. It's a good read. It's a short read. I read it at the beach It's a couple hours read, but it's an interesting.
We had to mention that
book.
beach, didn't we?
Well, that's the only time I read. But anyways, it's a short read for those kind of situations, I guess. So, and I look forward to that conversation continuing. I think there's 4 or 5 installments of that community conversation coming up. So.
Well, everyone spoke about events and activities that I had attended, so I'm not going to regurgitate any information or add. So they did a very nice job communicating. Nothing new.
Anyone else? We'll move forward, marching on. We have no request to address the board tonight, but we do have 2 brief presentations in order to get us out of here in our 20-minute mark. We're already 17 minutes in, so you both have to split 3 minutes. We're going to talk about summer meal sites and the social studies textbook adoption. Hopefully everybody got to take a peek at the VR that's outside. It's really, really something. Start with summer meal sites. We're good? All right.
Hi, I'm Laura Kepler, Coordinator of Child Nutrition. Good evening. Definitely don't want to be responsible for Ellen's meeting to be longer than 10 minutes. So I'm going to be brief, but as brief as I can.
Needle him?
I'm on Ellen's side here. So, but I am speaking towards item 11 of the business affairs recommendation. So just so that, and I will allow for some questions at the end real quickly, but of course I'll stick around after if anyone has any more details they'd like to know. So according to Feeding America 2016 study, 1 in 5 kids in Ohio do not know where their next meal will come from. So we know that hunger is an issue. We know when school's in session, we're feeding 27,000 meals per day to our students. So that's a combination of breakfast and lunch meals. So when school ends, if you use that statistic, then that would mean 5,000 to 6,000 uncertain meals. During the summer months when school's not in session, kids not knowing if that statistic applies equally here to Akron, it could be greater. So what can we do? We've been doing a lot all along. There's a lot of partners, a lot of people that have been collaborating to do a lot all along. For us, for Akron Public Schools Child Nutrition, we feed all of our own summer programs. So all our enrolled camps, our third grade readings, our pre-fall programs, really anyone that opens a program for our kids in our schools, we have always fed them for many, many years. And the city of Akron has, through their Parks and Recs department, been a sponsor for meals for summer sites, so that there are sites open here in the city of Akron where they could come and get meals. But they've had to rely on a catering company and also work with volunteers and churches and other facilities that really weren't set up for feeding but wanted to help and coordinate to get meals to kids during the summer months. So this partnership is in line with the district focus under the public collaboration and engagement. It's also in line with our district mission to prepare students for success. And really, I feel like it is a part of the intended goals of the community learning centers. So for us to come together with partners to collaborate for our kids. So what's available to help and assist is the federally funded summer food service program. And that program is funded through USDA. It is a reimbursement on meals served. It's something the city has done. It's something we've done under a little bit different avenue in our summer feeding programs. But it's administered by the Ohio Department of Education. And it allows that at these sites, students can come for meals, nutrition meals, free of charge up to the age of 18. So it is an opportunity to get funding to feed meals to our kids in the summer months. In this case, Akron Public Schools will be the vendor for meals. We will actually be providing the meals, the delivery, staffing our buildings to the city for a cost. And it will be the city that is the sponsor of the program. So the city will make sure they are in line with all the regulations to receive the reimbursements for the meals that were served to students or children. So what is being planned? Right now, if you have a listing, your last 2 pages, it's a little bit, it's just a proposal at this point. It's also in a contract at this point. So there's 34 open summer meal sites in Akron that are being proposed right now. Of those, these would be open summer sites from June 11th to August 10th, either serving breakfast, lunch, or both each day. Of those, 14 of the sites will be elementary CLCs. And those at the CLCs, we will be serving a warm meal, a hot entree with meal components. Historically, because of the facilities that were used and lack of storage and that it was more of a vended dropped cold meal sandwich type meal that has been available in the open sites throughout the city. So other sites that there are of the other 20 sites where there's churches, community centers, some housing complex, parks, those will be cool meals then available at those sites. There are some additional sites that will be serviced that aren't in the city limits, some sites that have been serviced by the city of Akron previously. And there are also, as part of this, there will still be 22 additional sites that are closed enrolled programs for kids that are either just in those, the majority of those are our sites. A couple are daycares, but those will be included. So kind of the focus here is getting the word out about the open sites for anyone up to the age of 18.
So how many sites is that total with these 34 plus the 22
56.
plus the 56 total?
And of the 22, 20 of those are our programs that either have camps or pre-falls or third grade reading or teams. Some for the high schools feed teams during the summer. So of those 22, those are specific dates and times for feeding specific groups of kids. And the other 2 are daycares. So the 34 are the open sites that will, once approved, get information will be made available.
Now, has this program been reduced because of the federal government's reduction during the summer with meals? Is this program affected by that?
Not at this time.
Not at this time.
No. This program is authorized for this summer right now with a reimbursement rate on a per meal basis. There's no cap to it. So right now the reimbursement is for the number of meals served.
If there are other churches, other sites that might want to get involved, how do they get involved in this process?
Well, right now, the sites that are existing are ones that have been involved in the past or have reached out to the city for that, and they might have specific needs for that. At this point, the application deadline is really quickly approaching for this summer, but those churches or those that want to be involved, hopefully with like the 14 elementary buildings, they may have one close in their neighborhood that they could be volunteers or support or encourage their kids or be around to provide activities for kids that are showing up on the grounds or outside. So that's the encouragement at this point. And then of course making it known if next summer that was an issue. Right. But the city has always done a really good job when people have known this is available and reached out. So a lot of the churches involved historically have been churches that have a history here of being involved.
Do we know how many we serve?
It's
been served in the past?
2,000 to 3,000 meals per day in the past, but it's the expectation. Hopefully, we'll be bringing them in. The hot meals, the kids, we know this from when we serve meals in the summer. Kids eat the hot meals better, so the sites and just being familiar with your school building might increase that, and that is the goal. So.
Now, do we advertise in the paper?
Yep, that's my last slide. I'm getting it. Sorry. I'm talking a lot. Yep. Okay, so we've been meeting with the city for a long time, 6 months. Last year it started, it didn't get in place for last year. We're meeting with the city regularly. And when I say we, I mean child nutrition services. So we know there's a lot of other partners that need to be involved with this. We know there's a lot of more on our team here in the district. So we've met with Deborah from the very beginning and talking about which buildings, how this is going to work. If the final approval goes through, then we have the building permits ready for these sites so that right now permits are in for all the sites that have a program, but this would be the additional weeks that are covered through the summer sites. So, and we would of course get principal signatures on those. We met with Dan Rambler, and at this point, because this is a little uncertain area for us to be opening the buildings like this, we are going to have Dan staff a person at each site, and we'll address it if and when hopefully not, needs occur. So he's also going to have his staff that's working in the summer monitor these buildings that they know are being used for summer feeding. So we met with Carla Sibley. We met with Carla Sibley initially to talk about volunteers because we didn't really understand the requirements of them saying, well, this church would like to help Mickey Bright, but what does that mean, people coming? So we met with Carla to talk about volunteer requirements and make sure that was in place. And additionally, there's another initiative going on with the summer reading initiative that Akron Public Schools in the city of Akron have been involved with already in the past. And if they expand that tutoring and some of those summer reading initiatives, it could involve our community learning centers also to have like Akron Reads programs going on one-on-one with students when they come for the meal. So that's something that's working out as we speak. We met with custodial services because we know that the buildings and grounds, the maintenance, this is going to take a chunk of the summer that's already a shortened summer when we're, opening school earlier this year, but not ending earlier this year. So we met with them. They are on board. We talked about what concerns, there could arise. They're going to, assist in, very importantly, in the entry of the one door that's going to be designated for kids to come in the cafeteria and leave. So that needs to be open at the times and closed and locked when not. So we have met with them also. At one of at the very first summer school planning meeting, we did briefly make Kelly aware and the summer curriculum staff that some of these sites are overlapping with some of our programs. Now the intent is to stagger the time so that the open feeding time, we're feeding our own kids that are enrolled in our third grade reading academies a half hour prior to the open sites of kids coming in. So that is the intent, so as not to interfere to other programs that we have going on in the building. So next step would be this is an approval of a contract to work with the city. If the board agrees, the city is on board to agree, and then we have to submit the final applications. And when I say we, it's not me. The city of Akron, as a sponsor, will actually be applying to the Ohio Department of Education to be the sponsor of this program. So the Ohio Department of Education gives the final approval, and we are diligently working to be in full force for June 11th, if that so comes to be. And then as part of our National School Lunch Program, we're required to let our kids know through either sharing the city's press release or making it available on the website, our own, to let them know where summer meals, but if you're not providing meals as a school district, we are required to let them know where summer meals are available. So that has always been a press release we have shared on the city's behalf. But this year, with the opportunity that if it involves some of our buildings and a lot of those kids could know directly, or we would really like to have a marketing campaign so that if this work and collaboration goes into it, the kids come. Questions?
Well, again, I was interested in how we're marketing, how we're getting the word out, because we want to provide a service, but we want to make sure our children take advantage of the service.
Yes.
Because we're going to be held accountable, and there are those, now because I was trying to figure the funding. The funding comes from the Ohio Department of Education?
Yeah, it's federal funds, the USDA
Agriculture Department
gives it to the Ohio Department of Ed to administer the program.
Okay. That's what I was concerned, because I know last year around this time we talked about the decrease in funding from the Agricultural Department. And I know Congresswoman Marsha Fudge talked about that as well, and just recently they were meeting about reducing some of those funds. And there was a big emphasis on, who are we feeding?
Yes.
Surely not only are we going to be reducing funding as relates to children. So that's why I was asking that question. And Mrs. Falk's mind, she's turning, the wheels are turning to answer. I think.
No, actually, I'm going to let Mrs. Kepler answer.
Oh, you're going to put her on the spot.
I'm going to let her.
So it is there are already established reimbursement rates for this summer of 2018 that are in effect, and it is a per meal reimbursement, and nothing is on hold right now. So there is, as the number of meals that are served, the city will in turn get the reimbursement for that, and they will pay us for the meals that we provide. So that's the way that will work in the simplest of terms. So I do want to also a few people here in the back that have kindly come. Audley McGill, many of you are probably familiar with. He the community center. He is the food service coordinator for the city of Akron. And Jeff Morton, as the community center coordinators, has been working. We've been closely working with them to get this going. And then Becky Fox is also the elementary school supervisor here for us in Akron, and she is the one that's going to be all the brains behind it and all the work. So, any other questions?
Just a word of commendation. You do an excellent job, as always, and this is a very important area for us as a community to be aware of and do our best to make sure we provide the service. And you do an excellent job to make sure that happens. I'm glad to see that we're getting hot meals into the I'll say hands, into the stomachs of our children.
The city knows that they're excited about the opportunities
Right,
and
for
different
the city to
meals.
be able to do that, and hopefully we can find a way to expand to those other areas so it's just not a cold
Yes.
meal.
And that could be next year. I think a lot of that will depend on the facility that we see. Some of them are parked, so it's really just dropping, and there's no refrigeration or storage or anything. So it just depends on each. But some do have some capabilities, so it's just a matter that you have to staff and be able to heat and be licensed and such. So, and I
Plus we
know.
bring the Swinson trucks out.
Yes. Well,
That is my food truck.
Food truck is our. There are a lot of
Like a
districts.
retired school bus, making it into a food truck.
So it could be the beginning of a partnership. And I know Deborah had talked to Mark Williamson about when we're ready to. It does have to, the press release cannot come out until all the sites and times and meal programs are approved. So, thank you.
Any other questions?
Covered it all.
Great job. Virtual reality. All right, so we'll go right into social studies textbook.
So the pressure's on. I got time moving. Good evening, board members and Assistant Superintendent Williams. Over the next few minutes, you're going to see and hear how this social studies adoption will change how students learn. This adoption connects our district goals of our One World initiative as well as our College and Career Academy. It isn't just about digital resources. It's about how students and teachers leverage their resources for learning. It's a very different adoption in social studies, and you should expect to see the difference over the next few minutes. When our teacher teams who volunteered to help us select it and push forward these materials, when they started this process about a year ago, I asked the teams to look at our district focus, specifically the results. And what we found as we worked through the process was that this digital adoption is not just amazing tools that strengthen social studies education. It's directly supporting our district goals, such as a high school graduation attainment and our college and career-ready focus. This adoption will provide that foundation our students need to connect them to their community, their country, and to the world as fully engaged and informed citizens. Anyway, a major change in this adoption is the number of textbooks of the students. 10 years ago, our social studies programs were supported by a warehouse full of materials. With this adoption, all of the resources will be delivered digitally. We will have a small hard copy reserve available for checkout with our new asset tracking system for students with special circumstances. But it's a far different look with far less textbooks this time around. Under the old adoption, each student had their, it was a paper pencil, PDF version of the old text and the hardbound textbook. And you folks know what PDFs are like. It's sort of static. It's not very flexible or interactive. It's essentially a direct substitution of a hard copy text. In this new adoption, each student has their own personal access to digital resources. These resources are going to connect students to learning in ways that are achieved only through a digital delivery. So why this adoption now and why go digital? 3 reasons. First, it increases student access to the learning. Second is the expectation of diversity we have in the historical narrative. And the third change is students being able to be active learners as they're engaged in their digital resources. Let's take a look at some live examples together so we can see the changes in how students interact with this digital adoption. Excuse me. In this preview, and I'm going to head over and steer the car here in a couple minutes, but in this preview I'll be demonstrating some of the digital resources you see before you. And these resources move us away from a PDF version of social studies to an interactive e-book version of social studies. The days of don't write in your textbook are long gone. Our students are going to be writing in their digital resources, and they're not just going to be typing, they're going to be questioning, they're going to be summarizing, they're going to be analyzing. They're going to be seeing, hearing, and thinking about social studies far differently. So let's look at how a high school student would begin exploring World War II. Modules or units start with a way to engage students or prime the pump and build the knowledge base for the learning. This unit begins with introducing students to the learning through an essential question that they should be able to answer by the end of the unit. The next resource that will be available to the students is an actual short video clip from the History Channel. And turn the volume off, I'm sorry. This video clip it's about what the soldier's life was like, the battlefield soldier in World War II. This short video clip is a perfect example of a digital resource that helps introduce the learning to the student as they begin their unit on World War II. And we also have active learning because when the students do see a clip or a digital resource, there's going to be a question that the digital resource is going to ask of them. Maybe ask them to summarize or describe what they're learning and so forth. The students can type in their answer and then check to see if what they're learning is connected to the goals of the digital resource. It's a great way for kids to see if they can stay on track and remain active learners as they're looking at their digital resources. The next digital resource in this World War II unit, as we introduce them to the unit, is this interactive timeline. And what a perfect tool to introduce students so they can see the big picture of World War II. This interactive timeline has navigation tools for the students to help them. It's broken up by U.S. events on the top and world events on the bottom. And the students then can quickly see these are the big learning goals I'm going to be studying during this unit, and how they can see how different events are connected to the bigger goal up front, and they're ready for their learning. Now I want to show you a page that I'm very excited about that has 4 key elements in this new adoption. I know. We were off for a while, and so I may have to restart it real quick. But hopefully our things will move quickly, and it looks like they are. So all of our digital resources have complete text-to-speech capabilities.
Opportunity, discrimination, and adjustment.
Additionally, all of our resources are completely integrated with Google Translate, which hopefully I'm going to be able to get to show you here in a second. The third piece I want to show you on this page is that students have the ability to take notes and mark up their digital organizer. For example, if a student wanted to take a note and save it, they could do that. The teachers also can see their markups and help them if the students are struggling or to see if the students are on track. The fourth element I want to show you that gets to active learning is that all of our resources have a graphic organizer or an interactive notebook built right into the digital resource. I'm going to go to this icon in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, and I'm going to pull up a graphic organizer. And this graphic organizer, the students on the page that they're learning are able to summarize and organize their learning without even leaving the page. Once again, the teacher can easily check to see all their students' progress, to see if they're on track or if they're struggling and need support or interventions. Here's an example of a student who would have that graphic organizer completely filled in. Once again, the teacher can quickly and easily see how students are tracking, if they're able to organize and summarize their learning along the way. As we examine diversity in the historical narrative, we look for the integration of all voices, including gender, race, and those that are underserved in our population. In a social studies adoption, we don't just look at how much space is on the page in terms of contributions. We take into consideration how challenges associated with discrimination, racism, and cooperation are a part of the narrative, how they help build and tell the story. Our teachers reviewed and analyzed all the materials and selected our digital resources based on that criteria. And the teachers were vigilant about it, did a great job with these particular resources. Another resource I want to quickly show you is our current events website that's built right into the program. There are current events that are broken up by topic or theme in the social sciences. Students can take a poll about something going on in the world or an article that they read. There are web resources that take students to additional vetted and appropriate websites so they can learn whether they're learning for a project or enrichment, they can get those extra materials. There's even a BBC feed for news and a daily video news experience for the students. In addition, the students also have this search bar that connects them to even more resources for their learning. Teachers can also quickly and efficiently manage student progress, such as what is completed and what students will still need to do. And there is a built-in dashboard to make data sharing and PLC work a far more data-rich experience for the teachers. This is very different for social studies in the Akron Public Schools. Teachers can instantly determine who's on track in the class and who needs intervention or enrichment very quickly. The teachers love that donut, by the way, because it's quick and easy to tell where they're at. Anyway, today, yeah, look at those shining stars.
Wait, who's the other two? Who's the bottom?
So the one we gotta look out, he needs extra help. We're gonna have to help him out, Reverend Walker. Anyway, today you got to see some of the resources in this new adoption, and I have some checks next to some of the key resources that you got to see, but certainly there's far more. When you came in today, some of you had the opportunity to do the Google Expeditions cardboard experience, and you got to see that that's also a connected resource in our adoption. This resource is very different from anything we've brought to this board before in social studies. This adoption supports our superintendent's vision of 24/7 access to rich resources for our children. On behalf of an amazing group of teachers who helped push this forward over the last year and our steering team, I would like to thank you for your consideration of the materials. I'd also like to thank you, acknowledge Megan Mannion and Gus Pharmakidis from Jennings, who helped us with our Google Expeditions experience in the hallway. Thank you, everyone.
Questions for Mr. Mahler?
I got one question. Training for staff and kids, how much is that? How much is required?
Actually, because this is so different, this is going to be look real different for how teachers work with kids. The roles and routines that they have to manage and support in a digital environment are very different. We have actually more of a 360 look in terms of our PD over a 3-year plan. It involves that initial training that we're all used to, that initial orientation when we get an adoption. But then late in the fall, early winter, there's that first follow-up where the teachers troubleshoot, we make sure everyone's on track, and we go deeper so teachers know how to differentiate, do some of the deeper assessments that are part of the program. And then follow-up in the spring is us coming to them. It's job embedded. We go to them, support their needs in their classroom. Maybe they get to see examples of it live and in action, or maybe they just get to develop an action plan of, hey, what's my next step for this adoption? So even though it's a 3-year plan, that's kind of the year 1 look-in for our teachers in grades 4 through 10, and then our AP and straight law courses, which is what this adoption covers.
So the training will start?
Actually start June 26th, I believe.
Okay. And then what about the students? Does it require much for the students as far as learning and getting on the Chromebooks and navigating? How much time will that
It really is, and it's something Mrs. Baylor and Mrs. Manfield mentioned when we talked about it earlier. So the teachers and students need to make sure they come up with the same plan in the beginning of the school year with roles and routines. Students need the chance to experience their interface and how they find things and where they go and what it looks like. So that process, those roles and routines need to be established for students so they can make the most of these digital resources.
It'll take them probably the first week of school.
Right. Or so, yes.
So I can get the answer. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say there were a few things that we got to see. We really wanted you guys to see this after we did. It was just one of those, it's great to have it in the hall and, we go out and we take a look, but this is just so amazing. One of the things that I really love about it is how well it takes into consideration different learning styles. I have one kiddo who he practically, if he hears it once, he remembers whatever he hears. He could read all day and not remember a single thing. There are others of us that have to read it, take notes about it, and hear it, but then it's solid. So I love that it takes that into consideration. I know you had a little bit of a struggle, but one of the other things I wanted you guys to know that's utterly amazing is the Google Translate on there. It's just absolutely phenomenal that, especially with our students that are English language learners, that it's going to, you're trying to read it in English, maybe you just need to see it in your own language just to back that up. I just thought that was amazing as well. And then the other thing that we talked about a little bit was, wow, how do you keep them from going down, how do you keep them on track? Because I could see myself, because I'm kind of a history geek anyway, but I could see myself, we talked about in World War II, you start looking at, the role of women during the war, and then maybe you're really interested in fashion, which is great because it fits in with your college and career academy, but then you're clear over here, and do you know what day the war started, right? So I love how you showed how those tools are built in as well. So it's just an amazing opportunity for us to present to our students. So thanks for bringing it in.
So we're going from, hardback textbooks of 20 grand or so to, 1,500 or whatever that number was. How did we come up with that number? Is that a guesstimate on how many kids won't have connectability, internet access at home for one-to-one, or?
From the 20,000 10 years ago to the 1,400 this time?
Yes.
That number is the actual number of hard copy texts we're purchasing this time compared to last time. In terms of, how did we determine to do that?
1,400, right.
We wanted to have a small excess for students who have very special circumstances. Maybe they're homeless. Maybe they're in transition. Maybe they have hard times and we just need to get them a hard copy textbook. These adoptions have contingencies, for lack of a better term, where students can load pages onto onto their Chromebook, and they can even access it without wireless connectivity, which was a real plus when we looked for what we wanted to choose. Additionally, the programs have other supports that can be assigned to kids, whether it's paper or something like that, if for some reason connectivity is an issue. So the decision of how much to get in hard copy was really based on just looking for those special circumstances for the students. The expectation is everyone's going to go, they have a Chromebook, we can use it online, they'll have their online access, and if not, we'll have those plan B, C, and Ds to help the students access the learning.
Are we inventorying our students now if they have connectivity at home?
We have in the past. I'm not sure where the latest data is on that. In the past, the connectivity has been extremely high. I would defer to Howard and his group to know exactly, but it has, in the past, it's been very high.
In our one-to-world rollout, every building is just working individually with students if they have circumstances, but we also have maps online that show free internet in each neighborhood. So the local McDonald's, the library, other places like that. So we've been able to work through. In this adoption, I think the need will become even more apparent because it'll be every day, needing to have that access.
And to your point, teachers are always going to need to have Plan B every day in this new adoption, ready to help and support all of our students, no matter where they're at with this.
I think we had Morgan and then Ginger.
Could you talk about how cutting edge this is? Are there other districts around us that have tried this so far? Where are we in the early adoption versus late adoption phase?
Akron Public Schools is actually a leader in social studies in the state of Ohio. As we developed our social studies adoption, it was interesting to see how other school districts like Cincinnati and Cleveland Heights, University Heights, and Cleveland call and say, hey, what are you doing? Which groups are you looking at, and so forth. It does turn out, for example, the TCI, Teachers Curriculum Institute, that we adopted, recommended to you at grades 6, 7, and 8. As soon as we made that recommendation, Cincinnati and Cleveland Heights, University Heights, also wanted to make that recommendation as well. So we feel very confident that the resources that the teachers worked on and have selected, and they did an amazing job going through these materials. They actually had their students using these materials as well. We feel very confident that the digital resources they picked are really cutting edge and will benefit us not just now or next year, but well into the future.
And thinking about the digital resources that were chosen, do they have any kind of offline help when a kid's at home and their parents may not know how to navigate this?
That's another one of those roles and routines we're going to have to work hard at with our teachers and our students, because it doesn't just change everything for teachers and students, it also changes for parents and those who are helping students. So we want to make sure we have roles and routines that students, parents know how to gain access and know how to help their students. Again, all part of that original initial orientation, because this is a different adoption. This feels and looks a lot different than anything we've ever brought to this board before in social studies.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, you know, this type of curriculum will revolutionize social studies for, like you said, across the state, because what you're doing, others wanted to copy, and not really copy, but because you don't own it, I don't guess, do you?
No.
But, you know, they want to, you know, do the same sort of process for their districts and that. And I have heard that, like, at state events where, you know, like Cleveland and Cuyahoga County, and they're like, you know, you guys at Akron Public School, you guys are leading in everything. So they have a real high esteem about Akron Public Schools and what we're doing in so many different ways. And this is just another way that we're setting the stage and pioneering new processes and roads to travel and education. So thank you.
One last question. Now, we looked at the state and see where we stood in the state. We're number one basically in the state with this now. Let's go further. What about nationally? And I'm actually, because I mean, I'm constantly looking at that, you know, best school district in the country. And that's my goal that I would personally want to see is the best school district, you know, in the country. So now where do we stand, if or have we looked at where we stand as far as nationally with this here? Because I would love to see us be the first one out there, because people will steal what you have and take it, and so they'll get what we have, and all of a sudden they're number one and we started it. So I want to make sure that we get our credit for that.
I do want to say that in the world of curriculum, when we look at one-to-one environments, other school districts have been one-to-one before us. But the curriculum companies really weren't prepared and weren't really able to shift their resources quickly to a one-to-one environment. What they did first that we have with all of our other adoptions is PDFs. They were really just the textbook online with maybe a couple clicks that you could actually get to some other resource. It really wasn't a digital-based resource. So the curriculum companies are slowly catching up to districts such as ours that are now one-to-one. We could never do this type of resource until we were one-to-one. So it all has to go hand in hand. Now that devices are in the hands of all of our kids and they're going home, now we can fully take advantage. And luckily the curriculum companies are now, some of them are up to speed with these types of resources. So it's kind of a synergy of the district and your decisions to go one-to-one. And luckily there's some companies now that have some great resources and we can take advantage of them. And the timing was right for us. We had the devices right when the companies were starting to get much more sophisticated resources.
So we haven't looked at out of state then. And my question was, have we looked at nationally, how we look at it, how we stand? And
yeah,
so
we haven't
nothing.
looked at social studies adoptions like this across the country to see our major competitors and where they are. But we'll take a look at that.
So that's what I wanted to find out.
Core content areas.
The same thing, the major companies are all getting closer. Math, we were a little bit closer. You know, the last math adoption, they'll be coming up. And I know the resources are going to be much more sophisticated than what our last adoptions have been. And these are all the major companies that Karen Gijic staff works with on a regular basis. And pushes, I should say, because we've been pushing for more of this type of resource.
You guys are doing a great job. I just have those questions. Those are things that go in my mind.
Me too.
All the time. I'm a championship guy. I don't want to lose. I want to win the championship. So.
Right. Thanks.
How does this change our steering committees when they look at curriculum now? I mean, you bought a textbook 20 years ago, curriculum doesn't change for 20 years. I have to imagine this changes every 5 minutes now. So how do we stay on top of
Well,
that?
that's the huge advantage of this, is we don't have to wait for the textbook to be reprinted to get, this is lifetime. The current events, if you notice the current events, those are things that happened yesterday. I mean, that's how lifetime all curriculum will become and should be. So it does, I mean, we're still on 5 to 7 years, depending on the resources, 5 to 7 year cycle. But I think we'll have to watch whether this just becomes basically, as long as we're happy with the company, because it's lifetime updating, do we really need to look elsewhere? Every 5 years, we'll probably want to pause and see what other resources are out there, but it certainly is a game changer.
Do you have to have people watching what's changing?
Yeah, and that's why we have people like Adam Motter and his team, that they're constantly looking at what resources are out there. Mr. Gijic, did you want to add anything?
Not even the content within this curriculum.
If I could interject one thing, one thing that I was, got it? I wasn't able to show you at the time. All of our digital resources are fully integrate Google Translate. Joanne right now is going to switch over to Nepali. Google Translate is over 100 languages right now. All of our adoptions also connect to Google Classroom and have to be in our full Google integration. We made sure that with what Dr. McWilliams-Woods was saying about, hey, we have this infrastructure, we got to use it. We got to make sure that everything we have is fully Google integrated, and we can use all these, the students and teachers can use all these resources to our advantage.
Mr. Alexander just made a good point, too.
I was just saying, I think that's good because now you got parents who don't speak the language, now they can read, so they can see what's happening there too. So that's a good piece there. So thank you. Very good.
Okay, any other questions? Okay. Good stuff. Any other questions? We're already losing. We'll never be able to brag. All right, if there are hearing no other questions, we have approval of the meeting minutes for the regular board meeting of April 30th, 2018. And thank you very much. I forgot to say that. Adam, thank you guys very, very much. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second on the meeting minutes. Any questions, comments, discussion on those? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mrs. Baylor?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Mrs. Lasher? Yes. Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Superintendent's recommendation?
Mr. President, I have before me for your consideration 20 personnel recommendations. These recommendations are in proper form, and I move their approval.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second on the personnel recommendations. Any comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Baylor?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Mrs. Lasher?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mr. President, I have before me for your consideration 3 motions and 4 resolutions on the consent agenda. These recommendations are in proper form, and I move their approval.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second on the consent agenda items. Any questions, comments, or discussion?
I just want to point out, pending approval, of course, a huge thank you to the LeBron James Family Foundation for item number 5. They're donating $62,398 for Chromebooks for the I Promise School.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Mrs. Lasher?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Reverend Walker? Reverend Walker?
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
And finally, Mr. President, I have before me for your consideration 20 business affairs recommendations. These recommendations are in proper form, and I move their approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any comments, questions, or discussion on business affairs, Ms. Mansfield?
I just wanted to highlight in Business Affairs, items 2 and 3. They go to help with some behavioral supports needed to create successful APS graduates. And since Mr. Miller is leading that team, we just wanted to highlight that real quick. Item 2 is an agreement with the Blick Clinic to provide intensive alternatives for 11 students with multiple disabilities who need wraparound social and emotional supports. And item 3 is an agreement for consultation services with the Blick Clinic for our teachers, students, and families, where behavioral experts come to the classroom to help staff write behavioral plans to ensure student success with students with intensive disabilities.
Then I think it's item 12, just to highlight again the LeBron James Family Foundation. We got Chromebooks, and then they have summer experience, and to the sum of $70,000 for the students and their families to go to Stan Hewitt Garden.
Thank you.
And I just want to point out item 19. I think it's awesome when we have post-secondary programs coming into Akron Public Schools to use our labs and our machinery to teach adults to get certification. I think we just need to point that out to parents of our students, that we have state-of-the-art equipment, and now and moving forward we will with the career academies.
Good. Anyone else? Any other comments, questions, concerns, discussion on business affairs? Any discussions and concerns? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Lasher?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes. Superintendent's report.
No report.
By way of President's report, just a couple of items. Would like everyone to check their calendars and let me know as soon as possible. I will send a reminder. And thanks to staff for helping us check dates for a joint meeting with Akron City Council. If we could just check calendars for Wednesday, June 13th. Also that week, and you can let me know, you can shoot me an email or let me know later today or tonight. And if you don't, I will shoot you a reminder tonight. Also for that week, if you could check your calendars for Saturday, June 16th for possible board retreat date.
Do you have times for either of those?
Usually yes, joint meeting, we don't have any confirmed, of course, but
Sure.
last year we did the joint meetings at 4 o'clock. It was like 4 to 6:30. And typically our board retreat starts at 8 or 9. And so let me know either later tonight or I'll send you a reminder email tonight. Also, we have graduation, so if you can't make one, and I do have a date that I wanted to ask you about because you're the only one that said yes, so I will get with you tonight. But if you have any that you can't make, just let someone know so that we can make sure that those are covered. We have Teacher of the Year, the 17th, and upcoming, and thanks Deb for all your hard work and making sure it's getting communicated well on the Kenmore Garfield meeting that's on the 23rd, the community meeting for the design piece for Kenmore Garfield. That's it for me. Committee treasurer's report.
No reports.
Committee reports, legal contracts and board policy.
We have for the third and final reading a request for approval, revised policy 4121, criminal history record check, new policy 3138, suspension during pending criminal actions, New policy 4138, suspension during pending criminal action. Revised policy 5111.01, homeless student. New policy 5111.03, children and youth in foster care. Revised policy 5630.01, positive behavior interventions and supports and limited use of restraints and seclusion. New policy 8141, mandatory reporting of misconduct by licensed employee. New policy 8142, criminal history record check for contracted school services. Revised policy 8600.04, bus van driver certification. I move that we approve these as read.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Did you get that? We have a motion and a second. Any comments, questions, or discussion on any of the policies that are up for approval? Any comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mrs. Baylor?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Mrs. Lasher?
Yes.
Finance and Capital Management Committee.
No.
Instructional Policy and Student Achievement.
Okay, since we didn't have a regular monthly instructional policy committee meeting since our last board meeting, I just wanted to mention two quick items. First of all, thank the board for your support of the new digital social studies adoption, which was passed tonight. So thank you guys for moving us forward. I also wanted to bring to the board's attention a partnership with the Crystal Clinic Orthopaedic Center that the LeBron James Family Foundation has arranged. On Wednesday, May 23rd, the Crystal Clinic will be setting up at Kenmore Garfield to provide free athletic physicals for any Wheels for Education and I Promise Network students and their siblings. I trust that everyone got one of these cards, which talks about it and explains a little bit. Additionally, Children's Hospital, because they didn't want to be left out, is also offering free athletic physicals for students at North High School through their robust partnership with that particular school. So some good things are happening as far as some additional services being offered to our children. So it's that.
All right. Mr. Miller, did you have an update?
Oh, yeah, please, thank you. Yeah, our next installment of our look at the successful Akron Public School graduate through the lens of behavior, discipline, and safety is this Friday.
What is that acronym?
Like I said. And we have changed venues. We're going to be at the new Trailhead Event Center at the Cascade Lofts, going for now and into the future. I think I've said it before, we outgrew Andrew Jackson House before we even used it. So for anybody listening, and there's going to be a Google map go out to all of our participants. We have about 110, I think it was, people who are invited to this. And so we anticipate, hopefully a good number of those will show up. I think I've received about a dozen regrets to date when I sent an update to everybody I think it was Friday. So we're moving forward on that.
Good, thank you.
Can we get a copy of the list when we get it, just to see who those individuals are?
Yeah,
And what
we
agencies
can
or
get it.
organizations
Yes.
they're coming from? Thank you.
All right. Any unfinished business? All right. New business. MOU with AEA, limited supplemental contract for middle school jazz band director. I know everyone got the information in their board materials. Did we have anyone that was going to say anything about that, or are we?
Kathy, if you want to give an update.
Yes, this is just to remind all of you, this was a request that we create a job code and a supplemental contract for jazz band director at the middle school level. We've had for many years the supplemental contract position at the high school level prior to us having the jazz bands at the middle school. So we now have jazz bands at 3 of our middle schools, and that's Higher, Miller South, and Litchfield. And so with the extra duties and responsibilities that go along with that, we worked with AEA to the teachers union to create the memorandum of understanding that's been sent to you, and they're asking for your approval of that this evening.
Anybody have any comments, questions?
I just want to ask, do you see that increasing across the board for middle schools, possibly some other ones coming on board with that curriculum?
Yes. Yes, I'm looking at Ms. Jesus over here who can better answer that question probably, but yes, I think so, yes.
The world needs more jazz, Miss Baylor.
That's right. That's right.
So we are looking for a motion for approval for the MOU with AEA regarding a limited supplemental contract for middle school jazz band director.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any final comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mrs. Baylor?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Mrs. Lasher?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
All right, with that, there's nothing else to come before the board in open session at the moment, then we will, pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G1, to consider the employment of a public employee or official of the school district, and Revised Code Section 121.22G3, to consult with legal counsel to discuss disputes involving the board and/or the school district that are the subject of pending or imminent court action. I'm looking for a motion to recess into executive session.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Anything else? Anything to come before the board before we recess? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mrs. Baylor?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Mrs. Lasher?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.